All right. So we want to talk about Wheelock chapter 18 here. We're dealing with the passive voice verbs and then what are called ablative of agent. So let's start with passive voice here. The voice of a verb, active or passive, has to do with how the subject relates to the verbal activity. We've been learning active voice so far. And in active voice, the subject performs the action. If the verb is what's called a dynamic verb or a fientive verb. Those both just mean that the action of the verb is something that you can see happening. It's an activity. Jumping, running, hitting, smoking, right? These are verbs that have an active, dynamic, or fientive sense. Fientive's a sort of a bit more of a jargony word for this in linguistics. Now, passive voice verbs, in these, the subject is affected by or acted upon with respect to the verbal activity. And so I give you an example here of active versus passive. The subject is the agent, meaning in active verbs, in active sentences, the subject does the verbal activity. So an agent is a doer. And in my example, Cicero wrote the speeches. The verbal activity is that of writing, and Cicero's the subject. He's the one doing the writing activity. And that's an active voice verb. With passive, the subject is the patient, and the patient is the one acted upon. Sort of like if you're at the doctor's office and you're the patient. You're on the operating table. You're not doing anything. The doctor's working on you. And so in our sentence, the speeches is also the subject, and there's some writing activity going on, but this subject is not doing the writing at all. Rather, the speeches are being written, right? And that's what a passive voice construction is like. The subject doesn't do the verb is being done to the subject. The speeches were written by Cicero. And you'll notice that in English, if I want to state the agent, I use a prepositional phrase with by in English. And the subject in a passive verb is what I'm calling the patient. Okay? When the verb is active, the subject is the agent. And agent and patient, these are semantic terms for the one doing an action versus the one being acted upon. Now, we want to remind ourselves here, because the lesson is about the present system's passive verbs. And so I want us to remember what Wheelock means when he says the present system. What is that? The present system is the set of verb tenses that employ the present stem of the verb. The tenses that use the present stem of the verb are the present tense, the imperfect tense, and the future tense. I am eating, I was eating, I will eat. Okay? Now, how did we find the present stem? Oh, there's another typo. There should be an E here. The present stem is found by going to the second principal part, which is the infinitive, dropping the re of the infinitive, are, ere, right? Remember those. And what's left is the stem. If the stem vowel at the end of the verb stem is a long A, then the verb's going to follow the first conjugation. If the stem vowel is a long E, the verb follows the second conjugation. And this chapter is devoted to first and second conjugation passive verbs using the present stem. So, well, that's what we're doing here. We're focusing on the first two conjugations and how to form passive verbs in the present tense using the present stem. And this is how it would say something like, I am killed or I am being killed. The imperfect passive, I was being killed, as opposed to I was killing. And then the future passive, I will be killed, right? Those tenses. So let's look at the forms here. The way we form the present passive indicative is we basically are going to take the present stem, just like in the present tense in the active voice, but we're going to use the passive personal endings. And these are new for us, okay? But we're just going to replace the active personal endings with the passive ones So if you remember for the active, I praise, you praise, it's laudo, laudas, laudat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, here we're going to add R for first singular. I am blanked, whatever the verb means. Res for second singular. Tur for third singular. Mur for first plural. Minni for second plural, and tur for third plural. Now here's the good news. If you remember in the active, it's T and nt, right? We have where he praises laudat, they praise laudant, right? T and nt. That's the only difference between the third singular and the third plural and passive as well, right? We have tur and untur. So just sticking that n before the T makes it third plural. All right, so here's what the forms will look like. Using laudo for I praise. Laudor is I am praised or I am being praised. Laudaris, so you are praised. Laudator, he, she, it is praised. Laudamur, well, we are praised. Or progressive, we are being praised. Laudamini is y'all are being praised, or y'all are praised. And then laudantur is they are praised. So what do you see here? The a vowel of lauda, right? Remember, we get this is the infinitive. We take that a and drop it. We're left with the stem, and we're using that to build the form. The a gets sort of swallowed up by the o here in laudor. So the first singular looks the funniest to us. Yeah. But since it's the first one, that's usually the one you're going to remember, laudor. So I am praised. And then otherwise we have lauda with the long A. And then it's a short A here for the simple reason that in our ant and trim principle, whenever we have a vowel before NT in any position, it always shortens the long vowel. Okay? The T, R, and M for ant and trim. That's when we have like the T at the these the personal links have to be at the end of the word. But NT can be at the end or in the middle of the word, but a vowel before short if it's normally long. Now with moneo, which means to warn or advise, we have roughly the same thing, except we keep the long E before the or, whereas the long A and loud is God. But everywhere else, the long E is present except for that in Tor form. Okay? So we have moneor. So I am warned. Moneres. You are warned. Monetor. He, she, it is warned. Monemor. We are warned. Monemini. You all are warned. And then monentor. They are warned. All right? So looking quickly at the imperfect, passive. Okay, remember we're doing passive voice here. We take lauda for the first conjugation. We take mone for the second conjugation. Now remember how the principle of the imperfect is to add ba with the long A? This is wonderful. We get ba here, right, in our forms. And then are there places where the A is short? Yeah, before the R and before the NT. And you remember ant and trim, R is one of my letters there, right? And NT for ant. So that's why the A is short. All right. Now, so laudabar is not, it's not I am being praised, but imperfect, past tense, but progressive. I was being praised, or I was praised habitually, or something like that. Okay. And then with moneo, instead of the long A, we get the long E for second conjugation. But everything else is the same here, which is nice. Okay.
So only the ending changes. The rest of them, this is pretty much the same role, isn't it?
Yeah. As far as like the difference between active voice and passive voice, it's just the endings. Yep. All right. So here I'll read these real quickly. So laudabar, I was being praised. Laudabaris. Laudabaris is you were being praised. Laudabator. He, she, it was being praised. Laudabamor. We were being praised. Laudabamini. Y'all were being praised. And Laudabant is they were being praised. And then Monebar. I was being warned. Monebaris. You were being warned, and so forth. Okay.
Is there any specific reason why the Laudabaris BE instead of BA?
Are you looking at imperfect or are you looking at
Future.
Well, we're not at future yet, but we'll go to future now.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
So for future, this I'm going to translate these as I will be blanked. You will be blanked. Okay? So with laudo, you will be praised, I will be praised, and so forth. So yeah, so look at what we have. We have laudabor, okay? And then laudaberis, laudabitur, laudabimor, laudabimini, laudabuntur. Lauda's got the long A, but then remember how in the future it was
B,
Bo,
Bo, B, B, B,
Bo, B, 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 boo. Do you see how we've got boo over here? We have bo over here. It'd be nice if we had B, 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 B all the way through. So this is the one place where we have something that's unusual and we just have to learn it, okay? So beris, laudaberis. And monebor, moneberis, monebdur, monebmor, monebimini, and monebuntur. So I will be warned, you will be warned, so forth and so on. All right. The infinitives. We can do active infinitives are what we already know. Laudare and monere means to praise, to warn, right? That's the active infinitive. But here's what the passive infinitive looks like. Laudari and moneri. So what am I doing to make the infinitive passive? Just changing the e of re to the long I, ri. Okay? And that means to laudari, to be praised, moneri, to be warned. All right. All right, so let's just real quickly look at a couple of the examples from the textbook that they give. So here we have Kaisedem admonet, and Kaisedem's got the accusative case ending, so he's the direct object. So admonet, he warns Caesar, okay? Now we're gonna take this active sentence, this is an active sentence, and we're going to change it to the passive. And so Caesar's the direct object in the first sentence when it's active. But to make an active sentence passive, the verb has to be transitive. It has to take an object. And to warn can take an object like Caesar. So to make it passive, the direct object is going to now become the subject of the passive verb. And then we're going to use a form of be in English to make it passive. And then what's called the past participle. So to be warned. If it's a present passive, it's is warned. If it's an imperfect passive, it's was warned or was being warned. Okay, and if it's future passive, it's will be warned. All right, but the direct object of the active sentence becomes the subject of the passive sentence. So here, Kaisar is nominative because it's the subject, and now I have this passive verb form, admonetur, right? Caesar is warned or Caesar is being warned. Okay, so that's third singular passive. Urbem delebant. So here is a third plural subject that's acting on the urbem because this is an accusative direct object. Okay, that's a direct object. So they were destroying the city. Now I want to say the city was being destroyed. The direct object of the active verb becomes the subject of the passive. So notice urbem as the accusative form becomes urbs in the nominative because it's the subject, right? So that's got to be nominative. And then now I have a passive verb. Delebatur. tour, right? Delebatur. That ba tells me it's imperfect. The tour tells me it's passive. It's an imperfect passive. So that the city was being destroyed. And then patriam conservabit, he will save the country. So here's my active third singular verb form. And patriam is a direct object accusative. He will save the country. Okay, conservabit. And this is our bo be be boo future tense form, right? Morpheme. And then if I want to make the country the subject of the passive verb, the country will be saved, right? It's going to have to change case. To become the subject, it's got to become nominative. So patrium becomes patria. So the country, and then conservabitur, this tour ending is third singular because the subject is singular, right? But it's passive. And the be tells me it's future passive. Okay? So the country will be saved. So you'll notice that in these three sentences that are passive, I have not specified the agent of the action, just who's being affected. Caesar is warned, but I'm not telling you who's doing the warning, right? Mm-hmm. The city was being destroyed, but I'm not telling you who the agent of that destroying activity is. I'm just telling you who the patient is. Can I indicate the agent? And the answer is yes. And when I do, in Latin, we mark the personal agent of a passive verb with a preposition, a or ab, plus the ablative of agent. Okay? If you remember, we learned the ablative of means. This is where, if I want to say something like Caesar was killed by the man is a personal agent who actually, with intention, does the killing. Here I'm going to use a plus the word for man. But if I wanted to say Caesar was killed by a lightning bolt, the lightning bolt doesn't have any personal intention, right? There I would use the ablative of means. And the ablative of means is just the ablative noun without a preposition. So you won't see a or ab in front of it. Okay? And so here we'll just look at the Wheelock examples real quickly and wrap it up here. So die Kaiserim ad monet, and this is the gods are warning Caesar. Then I have a passive sentence, Caesar by the gods is warned. Yep. So notice that plus an ablative noun is telling me who's doing the warning. Caesar's being acted upon, and the gods are the ones doing it, right? Agent. So Caesar is warned adis by the gods, ablative nominative agent. And then I could say Caesar is warned by these omens. Now, omens are not people, so they don't have person and intention, right? Here I'm going to use the ablative of means. Caesar admonetur, is warned, and then his prodigiis. Here there's an ablative, is, right? But no preposition. This is an ablative of means, not ablative of agent, because agents are personal. Gods have intentions, omens don't. Yeah, I'd still translate it as by, okay? But in this ablative of means, there's no preposition in Latin, but in English I have to add one. So warned by the omens. Okay? So real quickly, Mali viri urbum deleban. The evil men were destroying the city. So the agents are the subjects because it's an active verb, right? The patient is the direct object because it's an active verb. But I could make the city the subject of a passive verb. The city was being destroyed. Urbs delebatur. Okay? But if the agent is a personal agent, I use a or ab plus the ablative case. The city was being destroyed by evil men, bad men. If the thing that's destroying the city is not a personal agent, but things with no intention, like flames, then I use the ablative of means with no preposition. Urbs delebatur, city was being destroyed. Flammis, there's the ablative with no preposition. By flames. Okay. And then the last examples. These citizens will save the country. Qui cives patriam conservabunt. So direct object, subject, verb, right? So the citizens are the agents saving the country. Passive, the country becomes the subject. Patria conservabitur. So there's the future. There's the passive. The country will be saved. How? Personal agent. A or a plus ablative. By the citizens. Okay. Or by something impersonal. Arms and truth. Here, armis e veritate, that's ablative. Okay, but it's ablative of means and therefore no preposition in the Latin, even though English will add the by in both sorts of ablatives. Okay, so does that make sense?
Yep, that's
All right.
straightforward, yeah.
Very good, thank you.